Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called The Beastmaster, written by Anyar. Back in the early days, humans were weak. They were constantly in danger from everything around them, especially the fearsome meat-eating beasts. They had to fight for survival. So what did humans do? Pausing for an answer, I took a swig of my herbal beer, absorbing the chatter of the interspecies bar. Aliens from all kinds of galaxies came here to get drunk, and the atmosphere was always lively. Garclop, who was my newest drink companion, twirled a blade in his 3 feeders, shouting over the din, "I'm guessing they made weapons." "Well, that too, but worse." I slammed the mug down and leaned over to the table. "They took one of those meat-eating beasts, and they tamed it. Wolves, they used to be called, swift-footed pack animals with razor-sharp teeth and mangy fur. Now they kept as pets, servants to the Beastmasters. Humans feed them the bones of their prey and coo as they crush hard skeletons with their teeth. It is adorable to them, seeing the act of pure savagery."
"That's bad," Garclop admitted, "but anyone can force slaves to work for them. Stars above, we even did it with the Pharaohs. And you've seen the way they slaughter civilians. It's fun for them to hear us scream. In the end, we became their masters too."
"They were slaves, yes, but these pets were not. These wolves I mentioned became humans' best friend. Remember, they adored their pets, and their pets adored them. When have we ever spoken kindly of the Pharaoh?"
"Never. Well, that just shows how weak these wolves must have been."
I gulped down some more beer. I'd need the inebriation for the next part of the story. Oh, that was only the start. But after they achieved FTL, they found and tamed the Skullthrops. Garclop threw back his head and guffawed. It was a loud, gurgling sound that made me flinch. Once he was finished, he looked at me with a wide grin.
"Come on, old man, I bought you that beer for a story from your life, not a tale to scare infants."
"I promise you, this is all true. I have seen it." Garclop smacked.
"You even know what a Skullthrop is? They're 20 feet tall and 10 armed. They've got chitin plating harder than chip armor and fangs so sharp they slice through their own flesh when they feed. With just their wings, they'll fly faster than your thoughts can travel. I'd be surprised enough for a human, let alone you, to see a Skullthrop and live. But to tame one? Nobody here's drunk enough to believe that."
I sighed. "Trust me, it was tamed. The Beastmaster had it on a leash, and he told me they'd raised it since it hatched. Think about it. Skullthrops are highly attached to their hives, especially their hive mothers. Now, what if that hive mother was a human?" I don't think Garclop heard my question, because he was too busy cackling again and spilling his drink everywhere.
"That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Oh, stars, how do you even come up with these ideas? I should come up and drink here more often. Tamed Skullthrops," he says.
His last words rang through the bar, which had suddenly fallen silent. Garclop composed himself with a start and looked around. I put down my beer, and when I saw what everyone was looking at, I couldn't help but shudder. It was a human entering the bar, baring his yellow teeth. No human had come here before. But what were humans for if not new surprises? And this one was apparently no stranger to surprises, with one of them leashed right by his side. A small ball of constantly deforming grey goo, clearly tamed as another pet. Slugged along the human, who seemed perfectly at ease with all the attention. Garclop was the first one to break the silence.
"This is the human you talked about."
Now all eyes were on us, and I shrank back a bit. "Quiet," I hissed. "Don't attract attention."
"He's tiny," Garclop exclaimed, jumping off his seat. "Where are his feeders, his armor, and he only has 4 thin limbs?"
I saw my horrified stare in the bar's other patrons, who were speechless as Garclop stumbled over to the human.
"And what is this little blob?"
Garclop continued.
It's even tinier than his. He puffed himself up and held his blade into the air. What's his so-called pet gonna do? Sink into the ground? The human had been watching with amusement this whole time, but finally he spoke up, his voice ringing out throughout the bar. This time, all of us flinched. Daisy here does know how to sink, but I prefer much the other commands I've taught her. Would you like a demonstration? Galcrop stopped short, finally recognizing the malicious glint in the human's set of eyes. It was too late, though, and all we could do was watch. Come on, Daisy. See the stupid alien? Yes, good girl. The grey goo began contorting impossibly, and slime flew everywhere as it started rapidly expanding. Okay, Daisy. Fetch. The bar flew into chaos. It also ran, stomped, and slithered as the disorganized mob of aliens forced their way to the entrance and fled. The human paid no attention. His focus solely on Galclop, who was quickly sobering up. It was at this time that the bartender intervened to save the day. Hey, could you all take this outside? I really don't want to clean up a fight. No offense, human. The human bared his teeth again. What do you say, alien? Make your choice fast. Daisy wants a treat. Galclop, whose feelers were drooping, made a harsh gagging sound and looked wildly around the mostly deserted bar. No, you're just a human. You don't even have body armor. He puffed himself up and then turned to the few remaining patrons. 3 of them were watching with close interest. 1 of them had fainted. He's just a human, small and weak. We should show him what we think. Make sure he doesn't come back. At this, Skullcrop threw his beer bottle on the ground, shattering it into several small pieces. The bartender made a sad little noise. What do you say? Kick him and his tiny, moderately sized blob out the bar. The last statement was punctuated with a swing of his blade, which fell right into the path of some grey goo flying through the air. The viscous slime was now coating nearly every surface near the almost human-sized blob, which was slowly making its way over. One of the remaining aliens, a 7-foot-tall creature sporting a single monstrous arm bulging with muscles, stood up, flexed, and scowled. Daisy shifted in the alien's direction, but a quick "Daisy, stay!" from the human stopped her movement. This is a fight between you and the human. Thanks for the drinks, bartender. I'm out. The respectfully nodded his head and left through the door. Another alien, a violet-scaled being with sparks dancing between her fingertips, stood up and wordlessly followed. By now, the grey goo was much larger than the human and absorbed 2 chairs in a path. Galclop visibly wilted and looked at the last alien left, a humanoid steel construct that made occasional whirring noises. I am staying, it beeped. Galclop's feelers straightened in excitement, and he opened his mouth. The last alien spoke again. I wish to document this new daisy species, if that is fine with a human. Sure, the human said. Just stay far away. Affirmative. Galclop turned to the bartender, pleading. Come on, man. He's going to trash your bar. Do something. It was at that point Daisy let out a ding, or more accurately, her leash did. Thanks to whatever technology it was made from, it had stretched to hold out a gigantic blob that was now 5 times as large as a human, with multiple tables and chairs floating around inside it. If the bar were any smaller, the roof and floor would have caved in. Thankfully, something in the leash stopped the goo from growing any further, and the human took out a bottle of bubbly grey liquid next to the blob. He patted his pet and said, "Good girl, Daisy," as he pressed the bottle without its cap into the blob, which immediately began absorbing it. The goo let out a strange gurgling coo of pleasure as the bubbling grey liquid flowed into it. The bartender stared at the sight in amazement, then he shook his head sadly, grabbed a drink, and walked through the back door. It closed behind him with a slam. The sound jerked me out of my reverie. It was just us now. The crowded, spacious bar had emptied out faster than you could say Zolthar Namibadan. Truth be told, humans fascinated me almost as much as they confused and disgusted me, and this whole scene was thrilling me on a weird level. But the fascination was nothing compared to the chilling terror I felt. I gingerly stood up to make my escape, and the human seemed to notice me for the first time. I was almost paralyzed by fear as the predatory eyes turned to me, and every nerve in my body screamed for me to hide the attention. "Would you like to leave too?" I managed a tiny nod. "Go ahead, alien." I shakily stepped forward, ignoring Gullclawp's pleas, but I had barely gone a tail's length before I stepped into a pool of goo, which immediately stuck to my foot. The goo was spilling over the entire bar, even if the blob itself didn't reach all the way across. If I was younger, I would have made a dash for it anyway, but at my age, I sensibly chose to extricate my foot, retrace my steps, and leave through the back door instead. It was locked. I turned around slowly. The human must have seen the horror on my face because he let out a sharp laugh. I pressed myself against the door and cowered. He gestured. I have no quarrel with you. Join the robot if you want. You'll be safer there. I did as he ordered, hurriedly making my way to the table near the robot, who watched me with passive interest. Trembling from fright, I pulled out a chair and sank down. The human bared his teeth. Now, where were we? Gullcrab's feelers were quivering noticeably, but he stood proud with his small blade even as he backed up against the bar counter. Your pet doesn't scare me, it's just a slime. I eat slime for dessert. He was rambling at this point. I could step around it and slice you in half, or your pet will turn on you. You can't tame a slime, just like you can't tame a Skelthrop, you can't. The human raised a hand, interrupting. They call us Beastmasters for a reason, you know. It's because we tame beasts. Now, Daisy here, he said with an affectionate pat. Daisy might be a beast, but she's also my pet, and she's as loyal to me as I am to her. Us humans, we're kind masters, not slavers like your species. And if you aren't fully convinced yet, I'm sure Daisy will change your mind. So go on then, Daisy, vetch. Daisy stretched back, flattening and twisting herself, but otherwise staying in place. Gullclawp lowered his blade in confusion. Hey, Beastmaster, I think your pet's broken off something. There was a crash as Daisy contracted in a flash. The movement launched her across the bar in one impossibly fast blur of motion. And before Gullclawp could shout, she had engulfed him completely, splattering goo everywhere. I ducked to avoid the flying goo, but some of it still plopped onto my face. It felt strangely warm and sticky, and I hurriedly tried to wipe it off, fighting the sudden feeling of nausea. When I looked back at Daisy, I saw the human cooing and feeding her another bottle of liquid. Inside her translucent grey form, Gullclawp floated silently, mouth open in shock and fully immersed, still clutching his blade in death. The fight was already over. I threw up. I couldn't help. Here I was already drunk and terrified, and the sight of Gullclawp's body, it was too much. I heaved until I couldn't, then I heaved again. The alien near me gave me a tittering beeping sound, and the human laughed again. I was too lightheaded to notice. Remember this. We're the Beastmasters of the universe. We tame your worst nightmares and your scariest bedtime stories. Don't cross us. You won't like it. Yada, yada, yada. He yawned and snapped his fingers. All right, Daisy, that's enough. Sink. With a final gurgle, Daisy sank into the ground. I could only watch in horror as a pool of grey goo expanded on the ground around her and across the bar, much of it leaking out the front door into the streets. Within a moment, Daisy had shrunk to half her size, then less, releasing sticky chairs and tables that clattered into place. Gullclawp's bottom half was exposed first, then finally his head was free and the goo-covered corpse thudded to the ground, his blade falling from his hands. Seeing my newest drinking buddy on the ground made me feel sick all over again. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and thought of happy memories. Just as I opened my eyes again and started to exhale, Gullclawp groaned and opened his eyes. What in the stars happened? I couldn't help it. I really couldn't. With a grunt, I fell back and fainted, my mind consumed by blissful sleep. End of story. I would just like to thank the T5 supporters: Bushmaster 117, Casper Arnholtz, Draxoon WRE, Elijah Silvercross, Gray, John Carrington, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.